So today we are going to be ranking all of the Best Picture nominated films that I have seen. So let's get to it. Hello folks, and welcome back to my channel. So this is my first official video that I'm doing for this channel. The last video that I did about a week ago was just kind of a channel trailer, an intro to my channel. This is actually my first video that I'm doing with this channel that's actually involves movie-related content. So as I said at the beginning, I'm going to be ranking all of the Best Picture nominated movies that I've seen. I've seen 7 out of 9 of the Best Picture nominated movies, and I just thought I'd do a ranking of them. Now, I want to preface this video by saying I think they're all really good movies. I mean, they wouldn't be nominated for Best Picture if they weren't. So if I put a movie lower on the ranking than you would, like if I have a movie ranked number 6, but you, in your opinion, you'd rank it maybe at like number 2 or 3, then please don't be offended. I'm ranking these movies based on what I thought of them, my opinions while watching them. So again, it's all subjective. It's all up to opinion. Now, before I actually get into the ranking, I do want to mention the 2 movies that I haven't seen, just so that you know these 2 movies are not going to be in this list. The first one is Little Women. I have not seen Little Women, so Little Women will not be in this list. I've heard the movie's great. It's nominated for Best Picture, but I haven't seen it, so I'm not going to rank it. The other one is Jojo Rabbit, another movie that I've heard is really, really good, but I haven't seen it, so I'm not going to rank it. I'm going to stick to the movies that I have seen, and I'm going to rank them based on my thoughts about them. The last thing before we start, I also want to mention, I'm not going to be trying to spoil these movies, but if you haven't seen any of these movies and you want to go in knowing absolutely nothing about them, then don't watch this video, because even though I'm not going to try to spoil these movies for you, I am going to be giving a little bit of details that maybe you might find being too much information. But anyways, guys, let's get started with our number 7. So coming in at my number 7 spot is going to be The Irishman. Now, like I said earlier, I think all of these movies are great. So when I say The Irishman is my least favorite Best Picture nominee that I've seen, I'm basically saying it's my least favorite out of the greatest movies of 2019. I think Martin Scorsese did an amazing job with this movie. It was so awesome watching a movie where you have one of the best directors ever, and then on top of that, you have one of the best casts to ever be assembled with this movie. Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, Joe Pesci. I mean, it's really, really big names. And then you throw in like Ray Romano. Just the cast alone is enough to get you to watch this movie all the way through. And that's a big compliment. This is almost a 3.5 hour long movie. It's just, the story is incredible. I mean, we follow this guy who, when we're introduced to him, he feels like an average Joe. You know, he feels like someone like you and me who just gets caught up in this life that is so not average, and we get to just see how he evolves as a character. And Martin Scorsese is so good at characters. I think Robert De Niro did great as Frank Sheeran in this movie, and I think it's a little unfortunate that he didn't get nominated for Best Actor at the Academy Awards. I am glad to see that Al Pacino and Joe Pesci got some recognition and got nominated for the supporting category, both of them at the Academy Awards. So, I mean, it's just all around just an incredible movie. Should probably explain, well, why is it at number 7? Why isn't it, higher on this list? The runtime is what gets me with this movie. I mean, it is very long. For as great as this movie was, the runtime gets to you a little bit. I don't think this movie needed to be 3.5 hours long. I mean, there's a lot of conversations. There's a lot of moments in this movie where it's like, maybe slice that down a little bit. I mean, this movie still could have been the awesome gangster epic that it was without having to be like 3 hours and 20 minutes. I mean, it could have been taken down a notch a little bit, but that aside, it's an awesome movie, but the runtime did get to me a little bit. That's why I have it in at number 7. All right, so let's move on to our number 6. And coming in at our number 6 spot, we have Ford versus Ferrari. This is a very, very good movie. A lot of people, I feel like, weren't surprised that this movie was going to be really good. I mean, based off the trailer and the previews, I mean, it looked like a really good movie. However, when I saw this movie, I didn't think Oscar contender. You know what I mean? The fact that it got nominated for Best Picture is awesome. And after watching it, I watched this movie just recently. So before watching it, knowing that it got nominated, I was like, wow, it really, really must be good. And then I watched it and I was like, wow, that is just all around a really good movie. I mean, this is a really good movie. James Mangold, the director of this movie, he does a great job. I mean, there's this one, long racing sequence towards the end of the movie in the third act. It's, the big racing sequence. And it's pretty long. I mean, it's a pretty long sequence in this movie. And, someone who, I guess a lesser director, could have made this sequence very drawn out, very boring. But James Mangold finds a way to just make this racing sequence just so edge of your seat. You have, Christian Bale's character behind the wheel. And then you have Matt Damon's character who is, watching him go around and around and around. And you get everybody's reactions. You become invested in these characters. You kind of get to know these characters a little bit throughout the movie. This movie doesn't boast a short runtime either. It's also pretty long, being a little bit over 2.5 hours. So you're with these characters for a pretty long extended amount of time. So when it all comes down to it at the end and you really get, these tense moments with great directing, it just makes these sequences that much better. Now, like I said at the beginning, I mean, when I watched this movie, it was an all-around, just stellar film. So why is it only number 6 on the list? Well, and this is kind of a strange reasoning, but it's just missing something. It's missing that special moment. And I know that sounds like the corniest thing in the world, but I mean, if you are someone who loves movies like I do and you watch movies a lot, you know what I mean. Those kinds of movies, the classics, have a special moment, and I couldn't find that special moment within Ford versus Ferrari. Even though it was an all-around great movie, it was missing a moment where I just went, wow, this movie could win Best Picture. So for that reason, it's at number 6. And our number 5 spot is a movie that, I'll be honest with you, it in my head, before I'd even made this list, it was bouncing around. It was really bounced around this list a lot. But I kind of made a last-minute decision to put it here. I mean, at one point it was like, oh god, this might be my favorite movie of the year. Oh, maybe it's my second favorite movie of the year. And I was like, oh, it's definitely my second favorite. And then I was like, I don't know. I finally settled on number 5, and I think I'm happy with this decision. At number 5, I have Parasite. Now, Parasite is an incredible movie. Bong Joon-ho does just a stellar job directing this film. I mean, honestly, I know that Sam Mendes is the front runner at the Oscars to win the Best Director Oscar. But, and I can understand why. I love what Sam Mendes did with 1917, and I'll talk about that later. But Bong Joon-ho, what he's able to do with this movie, he creates something that is just so psychologically breathtaking, and it really grabs your attention. And I believe Bong Joon-ho said something at, I think it was the Golden Globes, correct me if I'm wrong, but he made a reference about how we can't let a language barrier get in the way of great cinema. And I completely agree with what he said. I mean, the moment that we decide, I'm not going to watch that movie because it's in a different language, it's the moment that we rob ourselves of great movies. And the moment that you just decide, okay, I'm going to watch this movie. I don't care that it's in a different language. I'm going to watch this movie. It's the moment that we just experience these amazing movies. So that's what I found with Parasite. The story that Bong Joon-ho creates is just, it's equally as, like, wild as it is, like, kind of funny, but also very thrilling at a certain point in this movie. I mean, this movie, it starts out as one thing, and it transitions to something completely different. And when it transitions, you notice it, and it is something else. I mean, as you're talking about how great this movie is, why is it only number 5? Well, and this is going to sound weird, kind of like what I said about Ford versus Ferrari. However, this is actually the opposite. Parasite had special moments. Unlike Ford versus Ferrari, I found a lot of special moments within Parasite. However, I didn't enjoy it as much. Like, it wasn't supposed to be enjoyable. I mean, there were moments in this movie that were very just heavy. I mean, Parasite is great because there's a lot of references to, like, social class and, you know, butting heads of social classes and a lot of symbolism. I mean, this movie really goes for it in terms of that, and as a result, with amazing directing and amazing performances, this movie has a lot of special moments, but I just didn't enjoy my experience watching it as much as I did with these next movies. So I had a hard time putting it at number 5 because from a filmmaking standpoint, this movie is, I mean, I would argue it's above some of these next movies from a filmmaking standpoint. But in terms of enjoying it, I just didn't enjoy it as much. So for that reason, it's at number 5. But again, I want to emphasize incredible movie, incredible directing. But let's move on to our number 4 spot. Coming in at number 4 is 1917 for me. 1917 was a movie that I did watch in the movie theater because I heard everybody talking about how this is a movie theater movie. And holy moly, this film is something else. Of course, the big topic of conversation was the one-shot approach that Sam Mendes took with this film. The illusion that it's all shot in just one take. And it does a great job at that. I mean, obviously it's not shot in one take. They hide the cuts, all that stuff. But they did a great job at hiding the cuts, I thought. The way this movie was filmed was incredible. And I mean, I can't even imagine as a director, you know, I can't imagine being in Sam Mendes' shoes and deciding like, okay, I'm gonna shoot this movie in one shot, and then actually following through with that and doing it cannot be an easy task. I mean, he takes it on, and he takes it on well, and the result is a very thrilling, just jaw-dropping film. From a filmmaking standpoint, it is incredible. And as great as the one-shot approach was, and as well executed as it was, I don't even think it was my favorite part of this movie. I mean, I think my favorite part was honestly the score. I mean, Thomas Newman just had oh God. I mean, there were parts of this movie where if the music wasn't as good as it was, the scenes would have been lesser. I mean, the music really does elevate some of these scenes, and it makes them that much more dramatic and that much more emotional and that much more engaging and intriguing. And you feel more with the music in this movie. I mean, there were a lot of special moments in 1917 as well, just like in Parasite. And the story was also really great. I mean, it was a simple story about, two soldiers during World War I and then the journey that they go on. It's a simple story, and that's what's good about it. You don't have to think too much about the plot. It's not a complex plot, but it's very ironically, it's very character driven. One criticism that 1917 gets is that we don't know a ton about these characters, even though we follow these characters throughout the entire movie. We don't know a lot about them. We don't know a lot of their background. And that's ironic because this is an extremely character-driven movie, because we're with these characters the entire time. But I thought the characters themselves I thought they were very interesting. We don't know a ton about them, but the problem is if this was a different movie and we were meant to know a lot about them and their background and where they came from and all of that, then it would have taken away from, I think, what Sam Mendes was going for. One of the best parts of 1917 is you're thrown right into the action. I mean, things start quickly. So if we would have had all of this exposition about, okay, who's he and what's his background and all that stuff, where did he come from, then it would have made this movie a lot longer, and it's not needed, in my opinion. Some people really wish this movie would have had more of that and would have had a little bit more exposition, but I just don't think this movie needed exposition. I don't think it needed it. So, I mean, I'm glad that we were thrown right into the action and that we didn't have this really long act one. I mean, it's nice to just get right to the point. In terms of criticisms with this movie, I mean, I'll be honest, I don't really have many criticisms with this movie. I mean, I guess maybe there were some parts of this movie that weren't quite as action-packed and thrilling as maybe I wanted them to be. I mean, there were some lulls. There were some lulls in this movie. But for the most part, I mean, it was pretty edge of your seat the entire time. I mean, the way it was shot, the way the story was told, that's why I put it where it's at. Because I just thought, especially considering how ambitious this movie was, the fact that it was executed so well by Sam Mendes really cements its spot for me at number 4. All right, so let's get to the big 3. So coming in at number 3, we have the movie Joker. Now, some people have Joker as their number 1. I mean, for a lot of people, Joker is their favorite movie of the year, and I don't blame them. Joker is an exceptional film. It really is. When I first saw it, I think it was probably my favorite of the year, but that's before I had seen these next two. I have to talk about Joaquin Phoenix. Joaquin Phoenix is a force to be reckoned with when it comes to acting. He is great. He played the role of Joker to a T. To a T. I mean, the fact that he's able to even compete with Heath Ledger in terms of his portrayal of the Joker is crazy, because I mean, we always thought of Heath Ledger as being untouchable because his Joker was the peak of the mountain. Joaquin Phoenix, he does an incredible job, and he really does challenge it. I mean, I don't want to make any I think he's better, blah blah blah, but his performance was exceptional. It really was. It was exceptional. He was the driving force in this movie for me. And, thankfully he has about 98% of the screen time, so we get to see a lot of Joaquin in this movie. Another thing that I love about Joker is it's a great way, it was just a great change-up. I mean, they really mixed up the comic book movie genre with this to really go in a different direction with this adaptation of Joker. This movie really hits hard on social issues, political issues, I mean, and it does it in a very good way. I mean, it doesn't like shove the messages that they're trying to make in your face. They don't shove it in your face, but they're there. And if you really think long and hard enough about this movie, you can recognize them. And when you recognize them, I think it makes you appreciate this movie even more because you're like, oh, I see what they're trying to do. like I see what they're trying to do here. And it's just very, it was gutsy. It was gutsy. I mean, I think this was, whether they were trying to do it or not, I think they were kind of like, you know what, Marvel, you do a great job, but, you know, we're going to give you our best shot here and prove to you why we can still make great Oscar contending movies and we can still make really relevant movies. So I thought this was really good for DC. I hope that they continue to go in this direction because I don't think they'll regret it. I like to see my Joker evil. I like to see my Batman to be the Dark Knight. You know, the detective, the troubled soul. Right, I like to see that. So I hope DC continues to go in this direction. So let's move on to our number 2 spot. So this is where things get a little bit tough for me because this movie at number 2, I'll be honest, I just watched it like a couple days ago, so it's still kind of fresh. And the movie I'm putting at number 1, I watched quite a while ago, so I was almost considering watching it again because I was like, I want to get a good idea of where exactly I should put my 2 and my 1, you know? But I decided I'm just going to go with my gut instinct. So coming in at number 2, I have Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So this is the only Quentin Tarantino movie that I've ever seen. But one thing I heard about Quentin Tarantino is that with his movies, he likes to fictionalize and put like a fictional twist on these movies about real events. In this case, he takes what happened to Sharon Tate, which, by the way, is that's pretty gutsy to do. I mean, you need, if you're going to tackle this subject matter, you need to do it with a light heart, and you need to be respectful. But at the same time, you know, you still want to make a good movie. I mean, you want to make an entertaining movie, and oh my God, does Tarantino do an incredible job at that. I mean, I don't feel like this movie was disrespectful at all to what happened to Sharon Tate. I don't. And that's what's so great about it, because this is such an entertaining movie, and it's still respectful to the events that took place. But Tarantino still is able to do what Tarantino does. Not that I know what Tarantino does, because like I said, I haven't seen his movies before, but you know, I know a little bit about him, even having not seen his movies. And I know that he has a tendency to make these strange movies, and he's kind of known for his violence in his movies, and he does that in this movie, and he does it very well, and he's still able to be Tarantino in this movie, and he makes a great movie. So first I'll address the acting. Obviously, the acting, I mean, it shouldn't be any surprise, the acting was incredible in this movie. Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt, both been in Tarantino movies before, and then you put them in this movie. So you have Rick Dalton, played by Leonardo DiCaprio. He's this actor who's kind of struggling. He's having to deal with this transitional period in Hollywood. He's kind of having a hard time coming to terms with it. You know, he garnered all of his success starring in a Western TV show, and he's wanting to go into Western films, but he always plays the bad guy in these movies. But he garnered all of his fame and success in the 50s, and now it's the late 60s, and the Westerns are becoming less and less popular. And then you have Cliff Booth, played by Brad Pitt, who is his stunt double. And it's so interesting, just the relationship between these two and the very different lifestyles that they live. I mean, you have Leonardo DiCaprio, who lives on like Beverly Hills or whatever. I mean, he lives in this very swanky neighborhood and he lives in this big mansion, and then you have Brad Pitt who lives in this trailer that's like behind a drive-in movie theater. I mean, they just live these completely different lives, but they have such a good relationship. I mean, they have such good chemistry in this movie. And then of course you have Margot Robbie playing Sharon Tate, and she does great, although she doesn't have many lines in this movie, which is interesting. Her feet are shown a lot, but she doesn't have a ton of lines in this movie. And it's interesting because upon first watching this movie, and I know that there were some people who didn't like this movie as much, and they wouldn't agree with me putting it at number 2. But I can understand when you first watch this movie and you are following these storylines. You know, you're initially following Rick Dalton, Cliff Booth, and then you're also following Sharon Tate's storyline, and you're wondering how all of these things come together. And then every once in a while, we see Al Pacino's character. Because at the beginning of the movie, Al Pacino, you know, he walks into this bar and he has this conversation with Rick Dalton about his career, and eventually says, you know, you always play the bad guy, and you know, oh, they're just using you. It's a ploy. You should come over to Europe and star in spaghetti westerns. And Rick Dalton flips out and he hates that, and you know, he just does his own thing. And then, but every once in a while we go back to Al Pacino's character, but it just seems kind of out of place. And then we go back to Rick Dalton and Cliff Booth, and then we go back to Sharon Tate, and then we just wonder, okay, how are all of these things going to fit together? So I can totally see people like going to the movie theater, watching this, and just being really confused, and then maybe even walking out. But you shouldn't walk out, because if you stick till the end, it's like Quentin Tarantino throws all of these puzzle pieces at us, and then he slowly begins to put them together. And then at the very end, we get this complete puzzle that's like, that's a good movie. There were so many great things about this movie, but I think my favorite part of this movie was actually the way that Tarantino was able to go from genre to genre. I mean, this movie is a mix of so many different genres. I mean, it's, at certain points, it's a horror film almost, with, you know, us being introduced to the Manson family. And the way he directs some of those scenes with the Manson family, and when we actually go to where they live, oh, it's like a horror movie. And then at certain points, it's a comedy. This movie has one of the funniest third acts I have ever seen. It is so funny. I laughed my ass off watching what happens at the end of this movie. It was crazy. The end of this movie is crazy. Oh my God, the third act is just insane, and it's so funny. And then it can be a drama. It can like be a tear-jerking drama. So it finds a way to do all of these things and mix all of these genres seamlessly. And that was my favorite part about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It does a great job at that. It really does. And not to mention the costume design, the set design, just everything looks so great and authentic, and it really does feel like 1969 Hollywood. It just brings it to life. And before I move on to my number 1, I just want to make reference again. Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt both did an amazing job in this movie. And I love Brad Pitt's character. He's like this exaggerated like American hero, like stereotypical like American hero. He's like this unstoppable force, and he's so charming and witty, and he handles some of the situations that he is put in this movie, especially with a certain scene with like the Manson family. He handles it like you wish you would handle it if you were in that situation, but you know you wouldn't, but you wish you would handle it like he does. Leonardo DiCaprio's character was so funny. I mean, the dude is just a struggle. He's really proud of himself, but at the same time, he's also really insecure. So he's like a perfect mixture of both of these things. And there's this one scene in particular, and it's in the trailer. He freaks out in his trailer on the set of a movie that he's in. He freaks out and he gets mad at himself, and that was his best scene in the movie, in my opinion. He just freaks out. And he's just, oh God, it's just so funny. They both do a great job in this movie. So I loved, needless to say, I loved Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. There's not many criticisms that I would hand out for this movie at all. I can't really even think of one on the top of my head. So that's why it comes in at number 2. But I went back and forth with these two in my head because, like I said, I recently just watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but I watched my number 1 quite a while ago on Netflix. And I could have easily watched it again, but I decided, no, I'm not going to do that. So I just went with my gut instinct. Coming in at number 1, Marriage Story. This was a movie that really, like, it hit me. Like, this movie takes a premise. It's about a couple going through a divorce. A couple who has a child going through a divorce. And there's a lot of movies that have been about. The movie that this one gets compared to a lot is Kramer versus Kramer with Dustin Hoffman. I've never seen it, but apparently, I mean, that's what people compare it to. So it's not like this is like an original idea. I mean, I'm sure there's been a lot of movies out there about a couple going through a divorce. But what Noah Baumbach does with this movie is, I mean, he takes a simple plot, but he makes it special. I mean, he takes a movie about something that's very, it's relatable, but it's also, I mean, this is a story that's been told before. I mean, it's like one of the oldest stories in the book. It's about a struggling married couple going through a divorce. But he finds a way to make this movie something special, something unique. And kind of like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, one of the greatest things about Marriage Story is that it also does a very great job at genre mixing. I mean, at its core, it's a drama. It's a heavy drama. And there are certain scenes in this movie. I mean, one in particular, the big fight scene in this movie between Scarlett Johansson's character and Adam Driver's character, who, by the way, these two are incredible. They each deserve their Oscar nominations. What Adam Driver does in this movie, I mean, the thing with him, and he's the biggest standout in this movie. Scarlett Johansson's incredible as well. She has some heavy scenes in this movie. Laura Dern, who's almost a lock to win Best Supporting Actress, she's incredible. But the thing about Adam Driver is he has not just one, but 2 incredibly acted scenes in this movie. He has that one scene, that big fight scene that he has with Scarlett Johansson, but he also has this scene where I can't remember exactly, but I believe he's sitting in like a lounge or something, and he's clearly hurting inside. But he starts talking, just venting, about what's bothering him. And eventually he turns it into song. And then he gets up on this like karaoke stage almost, and he starts singing what's been bothering him. And for me, when I was going back and trying to think, okay, what is my favorite Oscar-nominated movie, and what's my favorite movie of the year, of 2019, that is the scene that I remembered and then was like, oh yeah, it's Marriage Story. That scene locked it in. Not only did it make me just bawl my eyes out, because it was just incredible. Not that it was like extremely sad. I mean, I did feel sympathetic for Adam Driver in that scene, but it was just so beautiful. It really was just a beautiful scene. Because the fact that they were able to pull off a scene where the character starts breaking into song and not make it like really cheesy and like out of place and awkward. Whoever thought of this idea that, okay, we're going to have Adam Driver's character, he's just going to start venting his what's bothering him, his frustrations with life, basically. And then we're going to have him break into song. He's just going to start singing. I mean, when they were coming up with that idea, they had to have had a thought in the back of their mind, like, oh, this isn't going to work. And maybe they even discarded it for a moment. They were like, we can't do this. It's not going to work. But they decided to follow through with it. And thank God they did, because they delivered probably the best movie moment of 2019. I mean, it really was incredible. That scene just dropped my jaw. Dropped it. And I can't wait to watch Marriage Story again, because that is the scene that just locks it in for me. I mean, they could have so easily gotten that reaction, like, whoa, now it's a musical, why is he singing, this is stupid. No, it's like, it's so captivating. The scene is just crazy how just emotionally engaging it is, and then, of course, towards the end, again, I don't want to like spoil it. I did give the warning at the beginning. He reads, for people who have seen the movie, you know at the end of the movie, he reads her letter and reads it to his child, who was just put in the middle of this divorce, and she's standing at the door frame while he's reading her letter, talking about what she likes about him, and he's reading it to their child, and she's standing there. It's just, wow. Like, what a scene at the end of the movie. So this movie hit me the hardest. So that's why I have it at number 1. All right, well, thank you guys for sticking with me. This will probably end up being a pretty long video, so I apologize for that. But I just had a lot to say about these movies. I mean, these are some incredible movies. This also gave me a chance to like be able to talk about all of these movies. Without like needing to do reviews for each of these movies. I could just kind of go through them, rank them, talk about each of them a little bit or a lot of bit for some of these. And it gave me that chance to do that, so I'm glad that I did it. Anyways, guys, do not forget to hit that subscribe button. Also hit the thumbs up if you haven't already. Thank you for your support. Thank you for watching. Expect some movie reviews, more movie related content happening in the near future. Hopefully I can get that stuff out, and I can get some ideas for more videos to make. If you guys have any ideas, please put them in the comment section below. But anyways, that's all for me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and keep talking about movies.